Welcome back to Mars Today. This is episode 4. We're recording on May the 24th, 2026 at 3:57 coordinated Mars time. Today's episode is titled Unusual Patterns. So let's get started with the episode. Today we're going to look at this image here. And it may not look like much. It's a high resolution image, but I'm going to share a whole bunch of images with you, and hopefully you'll find all of them quite compelling. We're going to focus on this area right in here. Now, the image is titled Well-Preserved Polygons, and it was photographed on February the 2nd, 2022. The image ID is ESP 065269 with its stereo pair, which is sort of a duplicate of this image, and it's ESP 064781. They're basically the same. Now, what we're going to look at is, to start with, I'm going to share our first image, which is right here. Now have a look. What do we see here? What I see is basically a sand-covered wasteland with some highly unusual patterns that are potentially of artificial origin. Let's have a little bit of a closer look. You can see what's kind of a grid pattern. The patterns are highly unusual and they seem quite unnatural. This part of the image right over here, I find the most fascinating part, but we're going to get a close-up of that in an upcoming image. So just have a look for a few seconds. Okay, let's move on to our next image. What do we see here? This looks like a horseshoe shape with some type of off-ramp with rows and rows and rows of something. It looks highly sand-covered, highly eroded, and potentially this is a remnant of some past civilization. Could be from 100,000 or 1,000,000 years ago, and this seems to be what's left of it. I see a lot of straight lines. I see a lot of right angles, which are clues. Inside some of these squares and rectangles, you see things that look like kind of eroded structures, but we can't say for sure. I see 3 parallel lines which look like roadways. This looks like maybe it's a highway, I don't know. They seem to be all connected to one another in some way. Let's go to our next image. Okay, this one is more of a high altitude view, but the most interesting part here, at least to me, you see a very, very straight, which kind of looks like an elevated highway with an intersecting road, and you see a perfect 90-degree angle here, which again, sometimes you can get right angle formations in nature, but this one seems a little bit more suspect to me and looks a little more artificial in nature, but you'll never know for sure. But just have a look. I see what looks like a roadway going right through here. Again, this is all very highly eroded and could be remnants of a past civilization from 100,000 to 1,000,000 years ago, and this is what's left. On to our next image. Okay, here's a close-up of what we just looked at in the past image. And let's just zoom in here to get a better look. And look at that. Look how perfect this right angle is. Again, to me, it looks like some type of dusted over, sanded over, elevated roadway with connecting roads. You can see it here. You see something else here and here. Next image. Okay, in this one, the image on the left is a high altitude view, but what we really want to focus on is the image on the right, which I've made note of something that looks kind of unusual but quite fascinating. Okay, look at over here. You see what looks like a roadway, but what's this? It looks like an off-ramp connecting to another road. And what do I see over here? This looks like an on-ramp. Now, is it my imagination, a lucky guess, or maybe just some weird natural formation? But that's what it looks like to me. An off-ramp and an on-ramp. Okay, let's go to our next image. Okay, this one here, I see a lot of symmetry if you focus on mostly the center part of the image. Follow the arrow across, it comes down, it comes around, it comes up, and it crosses over here and it crosses over there. Now, what's interesting about this is you see this sort of triangular formation and another triangular formation, and these two kind of look like mirror images of one another. If you flip this over, it gives you a triangle. If you flip this over, it gives you a triangle that are virtually identical. So again, this whole thing here again looks highly unnatural and looks artificial to me. Again, you see another what looks like an intersecting roadway. Now, if you look inside the triangles, you see these bumpy things, which could potentially be eroded structures that once existed inside here. Just have a close look. I also see it in here. But yet again, I find this very compelling. Okay. Here again, I don't know how to really describe this. I'll try my best. To start it out, here we see another right angle, a nice, perfect right angle. I see some sand dunes that have built up, I guess, over time. The road comes down, around, up. Now, I see these circular patterns. It looks like something, it looks like levels of something. It looks like this was possibly once some very large structure that again has been weathered down and hard to see. And right over here, look at that. Is that a building? A weathered, eroded building covered in sand? Sure looks like it. Of course, we'll never really know for sure. And then again, you see down in here sort of a triangular like formation that's attached to the main feature. Again, with potentially eroded structures in here that are very difficult to see or determine what it is. Okay, this one is pretty obvious. It's basically just, it's a triangle. Now, sometimes triangles can form naturally, so I'm really not going to go into this one that much, but I just thought it might be interesting to show. Okay, here's another U-shaped formation. And what I find kind of striking about this is not so much the U formation, but look right here. Both sides of this have the same feature. Are these entrances and exits to whatever this might be in the middle? And this to me looks like it could be, again, more structures that are eroded and weathered out. Okay, in this next image, again, have a look at this very well-defined U-shaped formation. And there are a few, as I've shown in some of the previous images. Now, I certainly would love for someone to explain to me how this could form by natural geological processes. It's quite interesting. And also you can take note of several squares, rectangles, and everything in here seems to be quite interconnected. You can also see, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and if you look at all this debris inside the boundaries of these shapes, now again, I'm proposing that these could be eroded and weathered structures from times past, as I've said, possibly 100,000 or 1,000,000 years ago. Just have a look for a few seconds. Okay, in our next image here, what do you see? I see a rectangular shape with something in the middle next to a somewhat triangular shape with something, again, looking like a triangle inside the boundaries. I don't know what this is, but it's quite interesting. Also make note over here where I've got an arrow highlighting a small area. Have a look at these two that seem somewhat identical protrusions. I don't know what they are. Are they entrance points that come down into this from this elevated area down to ground level? Maybe. Also down in here, I see a stretch of, I don't know, a wall possibly on this side and maybe another one on the opposite side. Maybe these are small structures. Again, I'm not sure. And they all seem to be connected to this roadway, pathway. Again, whatever you want to call it. Could be a boundary, a wall. I'm not sure. Let's move on. In our last image of the day, this one is a cut from the first image that I shared. But what I've done is I've added a little bit of contrast to make things kind of pop. I'm not going to say much about it, but I want you to have a look at it for a few seconds. It kind of looks like a layout of a subdivision. Just have a look, see what you think, and post your comments. In our last segment, I wanted to share a chart showing what an extinct city would look like over various timelines viewed from space. So up here we have a time period over the first 100 years. What remains visible? Buildings, roads, bridges, and city layout like a grid. What disappears? Some glass and weaker structures begin decaying. Likely appearance from space. Mostly recognizable city with vegetation spreading. Now, after 1,000 years, what remains visible? Foundations, road grids, tunnels, and dams. What disappears? Most skyscrapers collapse. Likely appearance from space, a ruined city with heavy overgrowth. Now, let's move that timeline up to 10,000 years. What remains visible? Buried foundations, artificial mounds, and I'm not sure what large earthworks means. What disappears? Nearly all surface structures. And what that looks like from space, faint geometric scars in the terrain. Now, after 100,000 years, what remains visible? Street patterns, quarry pits, subway systems, concrete layers underground. What disappears? Asphalt, homes, and exposed metals. And again, the appearance from space, ghost-like grids, and symmetrical land patterns. Now take that up to 1,000,000 years. What remains visible? Large-scale terrain anomalies, mines, dams, altered coastlines. What disappears? Almost all recognizable city features. And again, how it looks from space, subtle, unnatural geometry and land modification. Quite interesting. So that about does it for today. I hope you all thoroughly enjoyed the content, and I hope to be seeing you again real soon. Take care.